Okay, so now we come on to a round 4 game from the French League, and so I was on a bit of a high, to be honest, because so far I've got 2.5 out of 3 against some very decent players, and I was now faced against a Romanian player Istratescu, who's 26-23. I had the white pieces here. Istratescu is a very strong player from Romania. He's played at Hastings a number of times, and I think he's won it on a couple of occasions. Very solid, very good player, very hard to beat player. But I think in chess, if you're on a good run, it really helps you and brings your confidence up. I mean, I know when I play a tournament, if I start well, I can I'm kind of very confident. I can think I can beat anyone in the world, rather than if I have a loss earlier on, I always find it quite hard to get back into the tournament. So around here, 2.5 out of 3, I was very confident before the game that I could at least get a result, and it was quite an interesting game. I didn't really know what I was doing in the opening at all, but I must have got some kind of small advantage in the middle game. But I had the kind of position where I really would like to have subbed in someone like Mickey Adams to take over from me, because I don't really understand these positional things that were going on. Maybe Karpov would have been another good choice, but unfortunately you can't do this subbing in chess. Maybe that's a good thing to look into in future. You can like have a tag team kind of situation, a bit like wrestling. So, you know, 2-man tag team. I'd probably go along with someone like Keith Arkle. So, you know, as soon as we reach positional kind of end game thing, I slap him on the hand, he comes running in, takes the board and takes over the position. Maybe if the tactic gets flying, then he tags me in, I get on the board, have a little punt. But yeah, quite an interesting concept. I probably can't ever see it working, but anyway, I probably should move on to the game now before I ramble anymore. So I was white, Istratescu was black. Started d4, d5, so c4, and now my opponent played d takes c4. So I have to admit, I don't really have much experience in this variation. I probably should learn to play pawn to e4 here, which is the sharpest way of meeting this move and more in my style, but I've only really known one line in the past, and that was knight to f3, so I continued with my standard plan. Knight to f6 and now e3. The idea, I just want to recapture this pawn on c4 and just play chess. e6, bishop takes c4, and now c5. So this is black's typical idea in this variation, and he often continues with some plans of a6, b5 and stuff like this. So I just castled a6, and I played bishop to b3. I played this move because I can remember a game that Nick Pert played in the British Championships with white pieces against Ganguly, and I think he won the best game prize for that year by playing some plan bishop to b3. I mean, okay, it sidesteps this move b5. Maybe if black now plays b5, you might be able to immediately hit this pawn structure with a4, which aims to create some weaknesses on the queen side. For example, b4 would definitely not be advisable for black, because he gives up control of the c4 square, and now a very nice piece to land there would be the knight, which could easily come round to that square. So bishop to b3, very sensible move. Knight to c6 is now played. Black continues his development, and now I didn't really know what to do here, to be honest. I'm sure you can sort of take on c5 and play some ending, but that's not really what I wanted to do here. I'm sure knight to c3 was an idea, but well, I played queen to e2 here, with the idea of just going rook to d1, and also I wanted to support at some point e4, e5, which is quite a nice idea, because we can just use this centre to hopefully start an attack against a black king. Now opponent took on d4, so I went rook to d1, and I was just hoping to get an isolated pawn position if I could take back, and then my pieces could fly into life, and maybe I have d5 later on. My opponent now played a very interesting idea. He went d3. And okay, I mean, after this move, I expect the position is roughly equal. At the time, I thought I had a slight advantage, but I'm not so sure that's true. Okay, if the queens come off, then black's fine, so I've got to keep the queens on. Rook takes d3, queen c7, and now e4. So my whole idea is to use this e-pawn to create some nuisance against black's position. I mean, if I can go e5, this pawn on e5 is going to be a very good starting base for an attack against a black king. My opponent now played actively, bishop to c5, with the idea if I go e5 now, he probably goes knight to g4, and he has pressure against f2 and e5, so this didn't look like a good plan here. So I wanted to take away this idea of going knight to g4 here, so I just played a very sensible h3, which can't be a mistake. controlling g4. So now my opponent played another good move, knight to d7. So he's again aiming to stop me playing e5, and he just wants to take control of the square. I mean, I suppose one negative thing about black's position is his bishop on c8 at the moment. So, but his plan of development is just to go b5 and bishop b7, and if you can get these two moves in, his pieces are very harmoniously placed. So I wanted to try to do something to stop him creating this, but I couldn't really see a way of doing that. I mean, another thing, I didn't want him to get control of dark squares in the centre, so I thought I should try to fight for these dark squares. So, okay, I played bishop to e3, just trying to swap off his strong bishop on c5. And again, if I can get some moves in, maybe even knight d2, rook c1 or something like this, then I should have an advantage. Bishop to e3, b6, so keeping control of the c5 square. Okay, went knight to c3, my opponent castled. And now I played what I think is a good move, and after my next move I think I can claim some advantage. I mean, if I play a normal move, then I'm sure black's fine, he's just going to go bishop to b7, nothing to worry about. So I've got to try to create some pressure around the queen side somehow. So I thought this bishop on c5 was slightly weak, maybe the pawn on b6 slightly weak, so knight to a4 is a good positional move. The idea of this is to really, I also want to stop his knight coming to c5, and it's hard for him to achieve this move now because my knight controls that square. So I think I've got a small advantage after this move by quite simple play. So black took on e3, I took with the queen, so the queen is much better placed here. It creates some pressure on b6, maybe I can even jump out to g5 if I want to go a bit crazy later on. So queen takes a much better move. My simple plan now is just to go either rook c1, rook to d1 with pressure along these open lines here. So I must have a small advantage here. So my opponent played b5, so knight to c5, knight takes c5, queen takes c5, bishop to b7. And now I think this is the critical moment of the game here. I mean, it's clear that I have something small here, because he's rather cramped, and my queen is a very good piece on c5. It creates pressure against his queen. His knight on c6 can't move at all. His bishop on b7 won't be able to get in the game if his knight can't move. I have a bit better control of the open d line and the open c line. So how do I continue with this? Well, I played a very natural move, but I don't think it's the correct way to play. I mean, one of my first thoughts, which might be correct, is to play a move like something like rook to c1, and I think this is a much better idea. Something like rook to c1 with the idea of actually going rook to c3. The reason I'm going rook to c1 and not, for example, rook to d1 is that exchanges are going to help my opponent. He's aiming to exchange pieces off. The more pieces he can exchange, the less his disadvantage is. And after rook to d1, he can play something like rook to d8, and there's probably going to be multiple exchanges on the d file. And the exchanges of rooks doesn't actually help me at all. So after rook to c1, let's say rook to d8, rook to c3, this is a very, very nice position for me. Because I've avoided rook exchanges. His rook can't penetrate into my position at all because they're all covered, all these squares. My knight covers everything, so there's no way for him to penetrate. And the other general idea is if his queen ever like flies in, then my queen can just drop into b6, which is pretty horrible for him because his bishop and knight are on pre. So this rook to c1 would have actually held a very nice advantage, and I'm sure, like I mentioned in the introduction, someone like Adams or Karpov would have played this immediately. And it's probably an area of game which I need to improve, and I've got some slight positional advantage. How should I continue? But I went a4, which looked natural, and still holds a slight advantage, but my opponent managed to neutralise it very quickly. B takes a4. Bishop takes a4, keeping a bit of pressure on his knight, and now he played queen to a5, and he's managing to swap pieces off. So I went queen takes a5, knight takes a5, and now rook to d4, which I think is quite a good move. Rook on fd8, rook d1, rook takes d4, rook takes d4, rook takes d4, and I have some small advantage here, but it's certainly nothing big. I mean, my rook's better placed than his. My bishop on a4 creates a bit of pressure on this diagonal, not that diagonal, and I have potential to get my knight into the game to cause problems. I mean, if I get one move, I'm going to go knight to e5, controlling some important squares, and then rook to d7. So my minor piece is slightly better placed than his, and maybe even b4 is an idea here as well. So he has to play accurately to make sure he doesn't drift into a very bad position, but his next move is a very good move, and he offered a draw after his next move. He went bishop to c6, And okay, I mean, I saw that things were getting quite equal, but I thought I might as well play on a little bit, because he's still, if anyone's better here, it's certainly white. And again, I still think that someone like Keith Arkell, Mickey Adams, if they were in my position here with the white pieces, they would have been able to certainly cause black more problems than me. I played the natural knight to e5 here. And so he's at least swapped off one pair of pieces. This is his whole plan. Bishop takes a4, rook takes a4, knight to b7. And I think this is another critical moment here. Again, this is where I think I made a slight error here. White is certainly better, my knight's better, my rook's better than him. It might end up in a draw anyway, but my minor pieces are better here, so I don't have to, I don't really have to worry too much about ever losing this position. I played my next move very quickly, but I think a very simple and good plan here would have been just f3, overprotecting this pawn on e4, which in some cases means my rook can move around without leaving it on pre in some variations, and also my king now can start running towards the central squares, and this would have actually, I think, still caused him some slight difficulties. I mean, I'm quite happy playing endings, and I think if I'd played this move, he's still got a bit of work to do to manage to hold this. I mean, okay, he's a very strong player, and he probably wouldn't have struggled too much, especially against me anyway, but if he's playing Karpov, he would have struggled, I'm sure. Okay, but the game ended, rook b4. I saw a way to get my rook to the 7th rank, which I didn't think too much about. Knight d6, rook d4, knight b5, rook d7. The problem with this now is though that his knight's very secure on this b5 square, not on that square, that's for sure. That is not a secure square. Basically, after this rook d7, oh, the game's been, I don't know what's happening here. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to have to try and remember the game now, okay, because I've just deleted the variation. But yeah, I mean, in actual fact, this knight I can never budge. It is quite a good knight here. It gives him a very important move, which we're going to see in a minute that comes up. Very good defensive move. Okay, the game, if I remember correctly, went f6, and now I think I went knight to c6, and then something like king to f8, knight to b4, a5, knight to c6 again, something like this happened, and at some point after I played some position, he managed to get rook a7 in, basically. I can't remember the exact position, but this very important move, rook a7, and as soon as he achieved this move, I offered a draw, which he accepted, because the rook is, I mean, okay, either force an exchange of rooks when I'm not going to have really any kind of advantage. My 1+ point was my active rook, or it forces my rook away from the 7th rank, where it was actually very, you know, it was causing him a lot of bother. So his rook to a7 move was a very important move. So maybe it's not as many fireworks as some of the other games that I had so far, and quite a solid draw. I definitely missed some chances in that game. I mean, if we go back to where I could have, where I went a4, in this position I played the move a4, which is very logical, but if I'd have played rook to c1, I think this would have definitely given him some more difficulties to handle. And later on, even after we got the ending, after I played rook to b4, if I'd have played the move f3 here, this is a much simpler way of playing, just to try to involve my king in the action as well. So it's still an interesting game. Wasn't too upset with that one. I'm still on a good score. I managed to lose my game the next day, but it was a very interesting game, so we'll have a look at that at some point, probably tomorrow if I'm not in bed with a hangover or something, and we'll move on from there. So please feel free to leave your comments, and yeah, I look forward to reading them. So cheers guys, catch you soon.